Bill Russell and the Boston Celtics are coming off their third championship win after beating Bob Pettit in the 1960 NBA Finals. After back-to-back titles, the Celtics feel good about their chances again this year as Bill Russell begins to realize he and his team can achieve immortality in the years to come by building off their incredible success of winning 3 titles in the last 4 years. Just last year, Russell had pulled down 51 rebounds in a game against the Syracuse Nationals. He knew he was unbeatable, and the only guy who could stop him, in his mind, was himself. But Bob Pettit and the St. Louis Hawks are doing everything they can to change that narrative. They'd beaten the Celtics back in 1958 when Bill Russell went down with an injury, that being the only ring Pettit had been able to wear in his career, battling the juggernaut that was the Boston Celtics. A team so deep with Hall of Famers, it seemed to be a nearly impossible task to overtake a team that looked like it could be the greatest dynasty in sports history. But that's why we play the game. And this year, Pettit led the Hawks to a 51-28 record, second best in the league. Meanwhile, out west, it's the Lakers' first year in Los Angeles. The team's goal is to achieve relevance again and get back to their dynasty status after losing to Bob Pettit and the St. Louis Hawks in the Western Conference Finals last year. They reload by drafting Jerry West at number 2 in the 1960 NBA draft. But who could be good enough to be drafted over Jerry West? The Cincinnati Royals were the worst team in the league last year, and with the number 1 pick in the 1960 NBA draft, the Royals select Oscar Robertson out of the University of Cincinnati. This dude put up insane stats as a rookie, with over 30 points a game, 10.1 rebounds, 9.7 assists, proving he was another early god of basketball. The NBA was taking off because of these hoopers, as the talent was becoming more and more legitimate every year. Robertson, along with Wilt, Russell, Elgin Baylor, Jerry West, well, they all want the same thing, to win it all, making the competition that much more fierce league-wide. This is Ancient NBA, Episode 5, the story of the 1960-1961 NBA Finals. Boston was the premier dynasty of the league, but as basketball continues to evolve, they'll have a harder time continuing to hold the crown as so many ball gods are introduced into the early game of basketball. Wilt Chamberlain had been bounced by Bill Russell's Celtics the previous year, but Russell had an incredible team built around him, whereas Chamberlain was operating more individually, without as many weapons as Russell and much less versatile a team as the seemingly invincible Celtics. The Warriors lost 3 more games than the previous year, but that was still good enough for second in the East. But Bill Russell and the Celtics had a firm grip on the game of basketball, achieving a winning record against every team in the NBA and winning the East with a best in the league record of 57-22. Formidable as ever, anything but title number 4 wasn't going to be good enough for Red Auerbach's absolutely devastating ball club, and Wilt Chamberlain had one hell of a mountain to climb if he was going to overtake the best team in basketball, possibly the best team in sports. But he felt he was capable, because although Russell had pulled down 51 rebounds in a game last season, that wasn't enough to beat Wilt's incredible record of 55 rebounds against the Celtics in November of this season. The battle of the big men was heating up out east. In the West, Bob Pettit was trying to figure out how he too would match up against this incredible challenge. The Hawks were good, winning 51 games and securing the 1 seed in the West, but even he had to wonder if they had what it took to beat the Celtics again. Their only win against them in the finals having been when Bill Russell went down with an ankle injury. St. Louis had just dropped another championship against the Celtics the previous year, but had done a hell of a job taking it to 7 games. It just wasn't enough, as the firepower of the Celtics was otherworldly. Pettit wasn't scared, still psychopathically competitive, but frustrated, having been unable to get it done yet again against Boston, who was taking his legacy from him as frontman for the best team in the West. He wasn't happy with second place, and didn't want to be remembered as the guy who couldn't surpass this monolith of a basketball team that was the Boston Celtics. As St. Louis prepared for the playoffs, the Lakers too were rebuilding back to what used to be an ownership of the NBA. Their early titles, now irrelevant. The team had just moved to Los Angeles to start over and get back a fan base that had deserted a lackluster Minneapolis team. It was Elgin Baylor's second year in the league, a ball god who had proven to be a championship caliber player, leading the Lakers to their first finals in many years back in 1959, but the Celtics had no issues sweeping them. They now have rookie Jerry West, another ball god, who would prove essential if they were going to have a chance against Boston in the finals, if they were even going to make it that far. and they were a much better team with West and Baylor, getting to second in the West with a record of 36 and 43. Still, not impressive enough yet for people to believe they had any real chance of even getting out of the Western Division Finals this year. But Baylor proved everyone wrong just 2 years ago, somehow willing an even worse team to the finals, beating Bob Pettit's Hawks. The only question was, who can stop the Boston Celtics? The answer to that question would come soon enough as the playoffs start in the West. It's the Lakers against the Detroit Pistons. In the best-of-5 series, it took all 5 games, but as history had shown in the past, the Lakers absolutely owned Detroit, and this year would be no different. LA wins the series 3-2. Baylor going nuts, dropping 40 plus in 3 of these games. He ends up leading the entire playoffs in points, proving to be one of the league's most dominant scorers when it matters most. So the Lakers would head to the Western Division Finals to yet again face Bob Pettit's Hawks, who had earned a first-round bye with their best in the West record of 51-28. Back east, Wilt Chamberlain's Warriors would face the Syracuse Nationals in the first round of the Eastern Division playoffs. Chamberlain would put up stat lines only he could accomplish, like 46 points and 32 rebounds in Game 1. But the Warriors somehow couldn't even squeeze a single game out against Syracuse. They were swept by the Nationals 3-0, leaving Wilt to think, how would it be possible to beat the Celtics when his team couldn't even get past the first round to face them? The Nationals were a little under 500 in the regular season, the worst seed in the East, winning 38 games in the 1960-61 season. They had upset Wilt's Warriors, but the true test would come in the Eastern Conference Finals, where the question would again be asked, who can stop the Boston Celtics? Dolph Schayes was the leader of the underdog Nationals. He was a scoring machine, and the team was pretty good offensively, with 3 players scoring in the top 20 in the league. But Boston was beyond ready for any offense, playing with the fastest pace in the league and still holding teams to 114 points per game, which was second best in the league. If the Nationals were going to pull this off, it may just be the biggest upset in sports at the time. But Bill Russell was the king of rebounds in Game 1, grabbing 34 boards on the way to beating Syracuse 128-115, not the start Syracuse wanted. In Game 2, we head to Syracuse, where Dolph Schayes drops 32 points, as Boston struggles to shoot the ball this game. They drop Game 2 to the Nationals, now believing it could be possible to top the best team basketball's ever seen. Syracuse had figured out a way to stay in this thing. Bill Russell was pissed. Letting a game slip after a rough offensive night, he knew his team had to shape up and not get complacent to avoid a huge disappointment. The goal wasn't to win the Eastern Division Finals, it was to win ring number 4. So it's back to Boston we go, where the Celtics would find their offense, shooting 44% on the game and holding Syracuse to 33%. The depth of scoring for the Celtics was too overwhelming for the Nationals, and they would drop Game 3 to Boston by 23 points. Schayes had to be worried now. He had woken up the giant in Boston, who now knew they couldn't take their foot off the gas. And in Game 4 back in Syracuse, it was more the same. The Nationals struggled to score, as the Celtics had 7 players score in double digits. Now up 3-1, the Celtics had 1 game to go before making their 5th finals appearance in 5 years. Again, the question was asked, who can stop the Boston Celtics? Not Syracuse, who couldn't get it done in Game 5 in Boston. They'd put up all the fight they could, having been the worst seed in the East and stealing a game in the series, but against the mountain of talent Boston had, it just wasn't going to happen. So the Celtics would wait for their opponent out west. Would it be the now Los Angeles Lakers, who they'd beaten just 2 years ago? Or Bob Pettit's St. Louis Hawks, who just last year lost to the champion Celtics? The start of the answer to that question is in Kiel Auditorium in St. Louis, where the Lakers, now with ball gods Jerry West and Elgin Baylor, would hope to be the answer to the question, who can stop the Boston Celtics? Baylor thinks it's his Lakers, as he drops 44, overwhelming the Hawks, along with Jerry West's 27, as the Lakers shoot over 50% in Game 1, an offensive explosion few teams in this league can handle. But as a team, St. Louis would score as well, 4 players dropping at least 19 points on the game. Pettit going insane as well with 28 and 20 rebounds. But in the end, the Lakers were too much, and they come up on top by just 4 points. We stay in St. Louis for Game 2, where the Hawks hope to get their defense together after a rough go in Game 1, but they couldn't stop Baylor, who again drops a game high of 35. But Jerry West couldn't score at the same clip in Game 1, shooting 28% on the game. As Pettit and the Hawks continue their offensive assault from Game 1, they take Game 2 by a convincing 15 points. With the series now tied at 1-1, we head back to LA. Baylor again leads his team in scoring with 25 points. More than anything, he wants another chance at Boston, now having another weapon in Jerry West, who this game dropped 23. The Lakers defend St. Louis well this game, and end up with the win by just 6 points. Now up 2-1, the Lakers are halfway to another finals appearance. But Bob Pettit remembers 2 years ago, when Baylor bounced his team from the playoffs. He plays every minute of Game 4, and the Hawks needed every one of his 40 points. Baylor and West combined this game for 64, and even though the rest of the team put forth an incredible effort with 50% from the field, Pettit's Hawks come out on top in Game 4 by just 1 point, again tying the series at 2 apiece. This series is incredibly entertaining. The ball gods are battling hard for a chance to answer the question people can't stop asking: who can stop the Boston Celtics? In Game 5, back in St. Louis, Elgin Baylor proves he desperately wants a chance at answering this question, dropping 47 points, and West with 24 of his own. The Hawks, for a second time, are overwhelmed by the Lakers' 2 new ball gods, as they can't keep up offensively. Despite shooting 47% from the field, Baylor's 47 points is just too much, and the Lakers take Game 5 by 9 points. Pettit's Hawks are fighting for survival along with the Lakers, but they don't have 2 ball gods. They only have 1 in Bob Pettit. They somehow have to figure out how to contain at least one of the Lakers' offensive juggernauts if they're going to win this series. So for Game 6, it's back to LA, where the Hawks make it a defensive battle, holding the Lakers to 38% from the field as a team. They just can't stop Baylor, who again drops 39 in an incredible series of scoring. Along with West's 24, Pettit drops 31, and luck would take his team's side this game, as they had some scoring depth in this defensive fight, having 5 players with 13 points or more. The Hawks win Game 6 by just 1 point, avoiding elimination. Pettit had found a way to get his team back in the series, forcing a Game 7 back in St. Louis, where Elgin Baylor was beyond unstoppable again, dropping 39 points, and West with 29 right behind him. But the Hawks focused on defending everyone else, knowing 2 players can't beat 5. Pettit himself drops 31, as the Hawks have 4 guys with 21 or more, somehow squeaking out a Game 7 with a 2-point win over the Los Angeles Lakers. They had done it. Pettit and his Hawks were going back to another NBA Finals, their 4th appearance in the last 5 years. Pettit was happy to have a chance to answer the question of who could top the Celtics, but deep down he knew his team was gassed after giving everything they had against the ball gods of Los Angeles, who no doubt would be a force to be reckoned with in the years to come. But he didn't have time for excuses. He and his team had a question to answer. And the 1961 NBA Finals would begin at the Boston Garden, as Bill Russell and his Celtics were more than ready to go. Tom Heinsohn drops 26 points, Bill Russell 31 rebounds, as the Celtics absolutely murder the Hawks offensively, having 7 players score 12 or more. They beat the brakes off a tired Hawks team by 34 points. Pettit had 17 this game, but was defended very well as he went 5 for 18 from the field. No big deal though, it's just Game 1 and he's been here before. He knows the Celtics. He knows they're coming for him. He just has to be more psychopathic and motivate his team to somehow get past this defensive nightmare and figure out a way to stop the scoring from so many places on the floor from Boston. For Game 2, the Hawks do a better job defensively, but Boston's gonna Boston, as 4 players for the Celtics drop 22 or more, and although Cliff Hagan had 40 points for the Hawks, as a team they only played 7 players to Boston's 10, and were defended very well, shooting just 36% from the field, as they drop Game 2 in Boston. The question, who can beat the Boston Celtics, is looking like it may be answered. But again, that's why we play the game. And for Game 3, we head back to St. Louis, where hope would ignite for the Hawks as their offense comes alive. With 6 players scoring double digits or more, Pettit drops 31, leading his team to a victory at home. Now down 2-1 against Boston, at least they have a chance against basketball's greatest team ever assembled. Staying in St. Louis for Game 4, Pettit continues his psychopathic will to win, dropping 40 points on the insane defense of the Celtics. But the rest of the team can't hang with him, as Boston again rains a ton of points all over the Hawks. They'll take Game 4 by a convincing 15 points. Now down 3-1, Pettit knows of the mountain he and his team will have to climb, and all he can do at this point is take it one game at a time. But Boston ain't hearing none of that shit, scoring all over St. Louis again at a more efficient rate, and again defending the hell out of this lesser Hawks team. The Boston Celtics win Game 5, 121-112, and the question has been answered. Who can beat the Boston Celtics? No one. Pettit again has been beaten by his and the rest of the NBA's biggest rival. He's running out of time to be able to catch Boston at this point, who now has 4 championships to his team's 1. Boston, on the other hand, isn't surprised by their success. They've built this team for one thing only, and that's winning championships. Their goal now is to achieve immortality in the sports world, if they haven't already, by continuing to answer the question themselves of who can beat them. No one. Meanwhile, Wilt Chamberlain sits at home watching the Celtics achieve something few sports organizations ever have, and his motivation is higher than ever for next year. He knows he's better than Bill Russell on an individual level, but this is a team game, and he'll need more to be able to knock off the seemingly impossible to beat Celtics. Out west, Jerry had a hell of a year, but that doesn't mean he's not disappointed, along with Elgin Baylor, who led the playoffs in scoring, but obviously it wasn't enough to even make it to the finals. The Lakers feel good moving forward, but at the very least, they'd like to come into the playoffs with a winning record, as they regroup for next year, hoping to be the ones to answer the question. And in Cincinnati, where ball god Oscar Robertson had an incredible year individually, his team is nowhere near answering the question. As the Royals hope to improve upon this year's last place finish, will any of these teams be able to take down what is the greatest team basketball has ever seen? We'll find out next time in episode 6 of Ancient NBA, where we cover the 1961-62 NBA Finals. Thanks for watching, y'all. Okay, I like that. That'll work.